Captain Charles Schreiner was a truly remarkable individual. He left a lasting legacy upon the people of this community, this county, and upon this state. Welcome to his home.
There are countless stories and interesting facts about the Schreiner Mansion, and those oral and written accounts make the history of this building a fascinating tale of adventure, success, and tradition. Join us as we embark on a quest for knowledge about this unique and eye-catching building in downtown Kerrville, Texas. The Schreiner Mansion is a recorded Texas historic landmark and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. But before that, it was a home, a museum, a library, and a Freemasons meeting hall. Although the mansion has changed ownership through the years, the Shriners were the only family that ever resided here. Who were the original Shriners that settled in Kerrville?
Charles Schreiner was born in France in 1838. His father, Dr. Gustave, and mother, Charlotte, and his 4 siblings left their castle in Alsace-Lorraine, France, for San Antonio, Texas in 1852. Evidently, Captain Schreiner was very obliged to serve his country, and is evident because he started off with the Texas Rangers, and he served there for more than 3 years. He then served as a private for more than 3 years in the Confederate Army. In 1865, Charles came back to Kerrville after his military experiences and stayed there for good.
In 1869, he joined a group called the Texas Mounted Riflemen. In that group, because of his previous Ranger experience, he was elected captain. He kept that title of captain throughout the rest of his life.
His wife's name was Mary Magdalene Enderle, and she was a German immigrant, and together they raised a family of 8 children.
During a period of time following the Civil War, it became rather apparent that this area needed a good general merchandise store. So Charles Schreiner teamed up with successful comfort merchant August Faltine, and they then formed a partnership and started the Faltine Schreiner Mercantile Company, which opened its doors Christmas Eve, 1869.
In 1870, cattle trailing started north, and a feeder trail, called the Old Trail from South Texas, came through Kerrville. The Old Trail coming through Kerrville was a boon for Schreiner because his business started picking up.
The building started out in a modest 30 by 60 frame building, but then grew into be one of the largest mercantile and banking industries in the Southwest for its time. Less than 10 years later, Captain Schreiner then enlisted the help of a renowned San Antonio architect, Alfred Giles, to design the Schreiner Mansion. Giles was a native of Britain, an immigrant, who designed and built something over 90 structures in Texas and Mexico, including structures such as courthouses, jails, and private residences.
The architectural style of the mansion can be characterized as a combination of Romanesque revival and Chateauesque.
Built in 3 stages. The initial stage was done in 1879, and then a major expansion in 1895, which just about doubled the size of the building. And the last stage of the building then was completed in 1897, and that added the front porch and the front columns. The building was actually built by expert German stonemasons, some of which were actually imported from Germany. When they did the final phase of the mansion, which was the addition of the porches and the archway, they added 2 turrets on the top. And that was to kind of mimic, in some way, the family castle back in France.
He was obviously very proud of this. He lived in the back of his cypress plank store for the 8 years before this mansion was started. It was the first limestone building built within the city limits of Kerrville. It was built next to his store so that he could keep a watch on his store. There also is a rumor, and it's probably true, that there was a tunnel that extended from Schreiner Mercantile into the mansion.
At night, when Captain Schreiner would close the store at 9 o'clock, he would bring the receipts home, and so that he wouldn't have to walk down the streets of a city in the Wild West frontier back in that point in time, he could basically traverse the tunnel and bring the receipts here into the home where they would be safe.
It consisted of a sitting room with turrets.
What is a turret room and what was it used for? And that's interesting because the one in the downstairs area, which is right off from the parlor, was kind of jokingly called the courting room. And supposedly when a young lady was to entertain her boyfriend, they could go back there and have a conversation in semi-private. But Mama and Papa could be sitting on the couch in the living room, or in the parlor as it was called back then, and kind of keep an eye on them. Now the upstairs turret room, which has glass basically on three sides, the story is that Mrs. Schreiner used that as her sewing room, that she liked to do, I think, crochet or embroider.
The main entryway features a striking staircase and parquet floors modeled after the original flooring. Turning to the right, the main living room boasts a fireplace and period furniture.
The floor we're sitting on right now is particularly unique in that it's made of, if I remember correctly, 6 different types of wood, perhaps it's 5. It's an original parquet floor that was in the mansion back when the Shriners lived here, and there are no nails in it. It's held together with small wooden pegs. A lot of the other woodwork in the house is original, like the wainscoting here in the dining room. It's all been refinished when the house was renovated when the Preservation Society took it over. And then another really unusual feature, especially for a home of that period, is the pocket doors that led from what was then the front parlor initially into the front dining room, and that is a pocket door directly behind me. And you don't see that too often in a home of this period.
Between the dining room and the entryway, the parlor features a fireplace and original flooring. This room was part of the first phase of the building's construction. It became Captain Schreiner's study, and later still became Kerrville's first municipal library. The Schreiner Mansion was probably the first home in Kerrville to have electricity. Prior to that, the family most likely relied on candles and kerosene lamps. This chandelier, with a foliage motif and hand-blown glass globes, is the only original light fixture in the mansion.
And the home always had an attached kitchen, which is kind of unusual when you think about it. Most homes in that time would have had a detached kitchen. The home always had 2 staircases. When they renovated the home, they used the original newel post, and that would be the post at the foot of the stair railing, that had been in the front of the house. They relocated it to the back stairway. The newel post is hollow inside, and that's normally where the house plans were kept after the house was built. Also a unique feature was that the story goes that once a house was paid for, the homeowner filed a notch in the top of the newel post. And if you'll notice the newel post here at the back stairway, there is a notch filed into it, which says, "I paid for the house." One interesting feature about the house, and a number of people have commented on this, and one of the reactions has been, oh, was the upstairs a ballroom? And the answer is no, the upstairs was not a ballroom. The upstairs, in fact, had 6 bedrooms, a bath, a hallway, and perhaps even a small sitting room. But when the Masonic Lodge took the building over in the 1920s, what they needed was a meeting hall. So they basically removed all of the interior walls and left only the two small bedrooms in the back, one of which is currently an office and the other is just a storeroom. But yeah, the room originally had at least 7 rooms upstairs. We don't know the floor plan. In his latter years after Mrs. Schreiner died, and she died in 1905, Captain Schreiner was confined to a wheelchair and basically spent most of his time up on the 2nd floor of the mansion. His great-granddaughter, Kerrville resident Josephine Dodo Schreiner Parker, tells us the story that for a period of time, every afternoon at 5 o'clock, he would wheel his wheelchair out onto the upstairs veranda, and the employees from his store next door would gather in the street and they'd wave to each other. And evidently this ritual became an enjoyable thing for both the employees and for Captain Schreiner. Supposedly, Gus Schreiner, on a cattle drive up through New Mexico, brought back with him a pinion seed or a pinion cone, I suppose it was, and planted it out in front. And of course now it's grown into a large prominent tree right in front of the mansion. Mrs. Schreiner was evidently quite a lover of roses. So there was a rose garden in the back. There's a fountain currently in the backyard of the mansion now that at one time was over where the post office building stands now, or actually it's the Kerrville Arts and Cultural Center, which was at one time the post office. That fountain stood over there, and that area was her rose garden.
He was generous beyond belief. He created tremendous numbers of good works within his communities, asking for nothing in return. Although poorly educated himself, he created a university, a scholarship program for Tybee High School graduates. He created a county road fund to improve the roads in this community that still exist. He also did great things for our community with his business interest. He created a municipal waterworks, a telephone company, an electric company, an ice plant, a grist mill, a coffee gin, and many other good works for our community. He died in this home short of his 89th birthday. 3,000 people from across the state attended his funeral, including governors, educators, politicians, employees, cowboys, and many others from various walks of life whom he had touched over the years.
The Hill Country Preservation Society owned and operated the mansion as the Hill Country Museum from the early 1980s until 2009. The society, led by Captain Schreiner's great-granddaughter, Josephine Dodo Schreiner Parker, was responsible for major renovations to the historic building. In 2009, the Preservation Society donated the mansion to Schreiner University after the death of Dodo Parker. The university provided educational programming at the mansion for the community's benefit. They also carefully researched and cataloged the contents of the museum, including numerous ledgers from Captain Schreiner's business interests. The university transferred ownership of the mansion to the Cailloux Foundation in 2015. The foundation is dedicated to charitable causes in the area, including the preservation of the Schreiner Mansion. Today, the building is open for historic home tours and may be rented out as an event venue. For information about current home tour schedule and additional information about the Schreiner Mansion, please visit www.caillouxfoundation.org/Schreiner Mansion.